Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray is part of Court and Parts,
podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows: Geek Gravy, We Got 5, TV Ate My Brain, and Get Real Movies at courtandarts.com.
Hey everyone, Bloodbath here from the Blood, Guts, and Bluray podcast. This month we're counting down to Halloween and we need your help picking out film favorites for the fall season. We want to know what your favorite scary movies are so we can talk about them on our upcoming episodes. So send an email to bloodgutsandbluray@gmail.com or connect with us on Twitter at bloodgutsbluray. As always, check out our show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, TuneIn, and of course, coretemparts.com.
Coming to you undead from Elm Street in fictional Haddonfield with a beautiful view of Crystal Lake, the podcast where every day is Friday the 13th and every night is Halloween. You are listening to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray, part of the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Bloodbath, Bub, and Brett 667, the neighbor of the beast.
Hey everybody, you're listening to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray, the official horror podcast of Core Temp Arts. This is number 15. It's part 1 of our countdown to Halloween. My name is Bloodbath.
And I'm Brett 667, the neighbor of the beast.
And I'm Bub.
Please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. We can also be found on Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn, and Google Play, as well as coretemparts.com. Follow us on Twitter at Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray. Like us on Facebook. And while you're at it, go like the Core Temp Arts page. The intro has been provided by the lovely Bride of Bloodbath. The music that you hear is that of the Slasher Film Festival strategy, unless it's Nightbirds, who have been so gracious and cool for letting us use their music that it's only appropriate we plug their new EP of old demos, which is entitled Who Killed Mike Hunchback? Only 1,500 copies were pressed onto 7-inch vinyl, and it comes out October 7th, so next week. And that'll be on Fat Records. So go pick that up. Get their latest LP, which is Mutiny at Muscle Beach. You will not regret it. Moving on. It's that time of year again. October's finally here. Oh yeah. Carved pumpkins in full swing. Halloween decorations start going up. The horror movie marathons are on the way. Costume decisions are nearly completed as we switch from shorts and t-shirts to flannel and jeans and beanies. There's no better time of the year than October, so allow us to throw a little pumpkin spice into your life. As we said last week, all month long we are going to continue counting down to Halloween with some of our favorite Halloween films and some of your favorite Halloween films. We got some inputs from our friends and listeners, but we aren't done taking them, so send them to us in a tweet or in an email at send an email to, bloodgutsandbluray@gmail.com. And we'll name drop you. It'll be fun. So, also, if you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you enjoy all the artwork that Bub so beautifully put together in honor of October. Thank you, Bub.
No problem, dude.
Thank you, man. It was beautiful.
And that, my friend, is my segue into Killer News.
It's that time again. It's Killer News with Bub on Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray.
All right, here. I like that. All right, so here we go. Robert Kerman, who played Harold in Cannibal Holocaust. You guys ever see Cannibal Holocaust?
I of course have, yes.
So the guy's like 70 years old. He's currently in a nursing home in Long Beach, New York. And he wants everybody to write him a little letter, keep him company. So, like recently they posted this online that, I guess the guy's pretty lonely, So he gave out his address at the nursing home, and you can write him little horror letters. So the address is 375 East Bay Drive, room 279, Long Beach, New York, 11561. You gonna write him, Bloodbath?
I am gonna write him this weekend. Yes. I will write. I am definitely going to write that guy a letter.
What about you, Brett?
Actually, I've never seen it before, but I'll definitely write him a letter of like, hey, I hear you're awesome and you're great. So okay, and then Brett 667, the neighbor of the beast.
He's in a lot of movies about eating people. You know, eating alive.
You should send that to him. You should tell him that, like, hey, I've never seen any of your movies before, and somebody just told me to write you a letter.
Yes, exactly. Because like 99% of the videos are going to be, of course, like really loving and awesome, and like you're amazing. And I should just write him like, do you know that I've never seen your movie before. I probably will. Okay, bye.
Whatever you do, don't put a return address, because he might come to your house and try to eat you.
I'll be worth the fucking. How old is he, man? I can take him.
He's 70. He's like 70 years old.
Anybody over 65, I can take him.
What, have you been working out?
Yes, man. Yeah, man. I've been lifting them 5-pounders, bro.
Those 5 years will get you. All right, so next up, I know this is like something everybody knows, but John Carpenter recently called Rob Zombie a piece of shit over this last weekend, over his Halloween remake. Basically, he said that Rob Zombie said that John Carpenter was really cold towards him when he suggested like remaking Halloween, and John Carpenter said like, no, I was like, make it your own movie, have a blast, dude. So he's like, I don't know why he would do that. So he called him a piece of shit. What'd you think of that, Bloodbath?
Well, didn't they bury the hatchet on Sunday? Isn't that the?
It took even less than that. It was Wednesday. It was like 3 days.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Rob Zombie like reached out to him hardcore real quick once he called him a piece of shit.
Yeah, and also his movie. I heard his movie is. You mentioned that the new Rob Zombie movie isn't very good. There have been several reviews that this movie is also not very good. I haven't had the chance to sit down and watch it yet, so I'm sure he's not feeling so great about himself, and that's probably the reason why he reached out to him. So, I don't know. I mean, from what I understand, John Carpenter's been pretty cold with anybody that's directed a Halloween film, and anybody that's remade any of his other movies, like Assault on Precinct 13 and stuff. So I think that's just his character, not his character, that's his personality, which is okay. He's entitled to it. He is a genius. So I mean, it is what it is. It obviously wasn't too dire because they did kiss and make up, so whatever.
Well, yeah, I think John Carpenter was the bigger man about it. He shot it out on Twitter first, like, hey, everything's cool, man, I mean, which is pretty cool,
I still don't think that remake is that bad. Like, I know a lot of people don't like it, but I kind of like it.
I mean, it's not terrible, but I could see where John Carpenter was coming from. He's like, he made, Michael Myers way too big. He made him this Goliath.
Yeah, he was huge. He was fucking huge.
He was huge. He's like, no, he's a normal guy, and he's like, and, basically he said that, Rob Zombie took all the mystery out of things by explaining certain parts. He's like, there's a reason I didn't put that in the movie, like, I didn't want you to know that.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Well, I mean, he did say make the movie your own, so, I mean, you can't say that and then be like, yeah, you know what, this is what you fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point too. Both good points. I mean, I agree that the Rob Zombie one, Michael Myers, is humongous. He's like, it's like a David and Goliath type thing. Nobody could take that guy down.
Oh yeah.
So I'll agree with that in like physical stature, but again, he did say like he gave him sort of unbridled license to do whatever he wanted, and then you can't turn around and be like, wow, he made him too big, and At some point, you had to. That's something you gotta keep to yourself. That's what I think. So, I don't know.
He was probably like all pissed off about all the masks in like his cell. He was like, no, he just walks into a Halloween store and he buys the cheapest mask. He's not making all these fucking masks.
What else you got on the? What's on the docket?
All right, so Home Depot in Canada, all the Home Depots have removed a Halloween decoration called the Tapping Creeper. All right, so basically, it's this thing that clings to your window that looks like a scary man's face that taps on your window. It runs for $44.99, and it has a 5-star rating on the Home Depot website. But I guess people in Canada are saying that, voyeurism and everything like that, it's not cool, so they completely removed it from Canada.
Are you kidding me?
Like, I swear to you, Canadians are saying it leads to sexual assaults, it leads to rapes, it leads to this. The decoration is fucking awesome. I'm going to get one for my house. I'm doing it.
That's the lamest thing. It's one of the lamest things I've ever heard. I'm surprised I didn't hear about this week. It's Halloween. Like,
well, we live in America, man. I mean, dude, you could still get it here, land of the free.
Yeah, but we pull stupid puritanical stuff too. Like the video game thing years ago. Video games is going to lead to video game violence is going to make you cause real violence. Whatever. That's so lame. Fuck you, Canada. You fucked up. And right before hockey season? Fucking idiots.
What are they doing? I'm telling you. And this decoration's actually pretty cool. Like, I mean, like, it's got a 5-star rating on Home Depot. Like, and like people are coming like forward on HomeDepot.com and saying like, I'm a woman, I'm 35 years old, I have that shit in my apartment because it's awesome. It's creepy.
So wait,
scares all my friends.
You put it in your window and it taps so that you can creep people out that are walking past. It's not like you put it on somebody else's house outside to bug the shit out of them, right?
I'm pretty sure the way it looks is you put it outside your house to freak people out that you're having over.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
But it's cool. It has an animatronic hand that taps on your window. And the thing has a creepy face and a hood on.
That's fucking awesome.
That's awesome. That's a great
Halloween.
That's a great
Halloween.
Halloween.
For $45, I'm telling you, you can't beat that for $45.
Home Depot just made a whole bunch of money.
I'm fucking buying one tomorrow. I gotta buy my kid a new backpack and a fucking creepy tapper.
That's awesome.
I can't. It's amazing.
He's at a loss for words. It never happens, but it just happened.
I gotta be honest with you. I'm like not in a very good mood today, so I'm hoping.
I'm reading that vibe.
It's just like I'm in one of those where I'm like a little not with the podcast or anything. I'm just like just fed up. You know what I mean? Like the weather's fucking with me right now, and I'm getting ready to move, and that's a little bit stressful. And my kid's like pushing out another 2 teeth, so she's like not really fun to be around like normal. My dog has been eating cat shit outside. It's been just a fucking nightmare the last day. And the only thing that is good that's happening is this podcast. And after this, Kristen made like homemade, what are they, like ho-hos, ding-dongs, whatever they are. She made them herself. So I'm going to eat a bunch of those and just cry. Because that's where I'm at right now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our new segment, Counseling Corner. Let's go ahead and Bloodbath, what's really bothering you?
Well, also, I'm a little stressed out because, we're coming to the end of the baseball season, and I'm pretty sure the Mets are going to get in. But I mean, if they get in, does it really matter? Stressful.
That's true.
They're making me nervous. I mean, they did it good tonight, but I mean, they still make me nervous.
Oh yeah.
It's like, okay, if the Cards lose tonight, they seal the deal. But I'm still not wholeheartedly into this.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. As being a Met fan, that's what it's all about. So,
yep.
Anyway, what else you got?
All right, so this is my last thing. The whole thing. Did you hear like all these clown things this week? There's a lot of clown stuff happening.
I was gonna actually bring that up when Bloodbath, you were talking about all things in October. I was gonna be like, yeah, creepy fucking clowns in the goddamn forests.
Talk to me about clowns. I need to be cheered up.
The media has officially deemed it the clown apocalypse. You know, it's crazy. It's happening in Florida. It's happening in Pennsylvania, Kentucky. All these things are like popping up. There was a kid just arrested in New Jersey like last night, driving a hearse through a super Walmart dressed as a clown, like screaming shit at people.
Like into the store? Or
no, he was just driving around the parking lot, like you're walking your wife and your kid to the car. He rolls up on you in a hearse, like you know, acting like a clown.
Okay, so here's the deal. If he is just driving by in a hearse and not doing anything, that's fine. If he starts yelling stuff and scaring my kid, I'm pulling him out of the car and I'm going to beat his ass in front of everybody. That's what's happening.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's how it was going down.
America.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So the guy got arrested, so he was doing a little more than just driving by.
Yeah. If he's doing circles in the parking lot, that's hilarious. And it's creepy, and it's okay. Like, I get it. We're approaching Halloween, but the moment you start trying to, like, scare my kid when, like, my kid's not in on the joke, you know what I mean? Like Halloween, if he's, like, jumping out of bushes yelling boo in front of his yard, like, that's fine, because you should be half ready for something like that on Halloween. But, yeah. Where in New Jersey was it? I'm curious. Do you know? Did it say?
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
I'm not too sure. Probably South Jersey.
No, it's
They're the worst.
definitely South Jersey. They're pieces of shit.
It's not Northern Jersey. We're classy up here.
Herschel Gordon-Lewis died this week too. Did you hear that?
No.
He got the Godfather of Gore? I forget his title, but he made all these crazy bloody films in like the 60s and the 70s and stuff. And he did it for many, many years. And Blood Feast, I think, is the big one. So rest in peace, Herschel Gordon-Lewis. What else you got? We good?
That's the way to end Killer News, dude.
You can't end it any way better than with Clown Apocalypse. I think you killed it. You killed it. So there it is.
All the clowns are dead.
All the clowns are dead.
And now, ask Bloodbath anything on Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray.
We have a new segment. It's called Ask Bloodbath Anything. We got some people to ask us a few questions, or ask me a few questions. Pete from the We Got 5 podcast asked me 10 questions. I
love Pete.
Yeah, I can't, Pete. I can't get to all of them, but I'm gonna figure out a way to answer all of them, and it'll be funny. But today I'll just do one. He asks, which show do you wish you were a cast member in? And growing up, my favorite show was Salute Your Shorts, so I think that would have been a trip to be on that show. But now as an adult, I wish I was 18 years younger so I could have been on Stranger Things. I think that would have been great. Carly from That Pop This Life asks, what is the best horror movie soundtrack? I think I'd have to say It Follows. There are obvious ones like Halloween and whatnot, but the It Follows soundtrack really resonated with me the way no other soundtrack has.
Disaster Beast killed that thing.
Oh, he crushed it. It's so good. Every little bit of it is good. And he opened the door for a whole new like synthwave revolution. It's kind of nice. I've been listening to a lot of it.
So good.
So
good.
Chris from the Let's Chat podcast wants to know why I hate punknews.org so much. I know he's trying to troll me into a tirade about it. But to put it simply, punknews.org is the like indie music equivalent to ESPN. From time to time, they pass valuable information about what's going on in the world of punk and hardcore and all the subgenres that they're linked to. But at the end of the day, they think that they're more important than the music that they're covering, specifically the people who do their podcasts. The same way that ESPN analysts, like Stephen A. Smith, and the culture that has bred turds like him, think that the sport they cover is less important than they are. At the end of the day, the NBA is going to thrive without Stephen A. Smith, the same way hardcore and punk is going to thrive without punknews.org, because it doesn't need punknews.org. It's the other way around. They contribute nothing other than their own terrible opinions, and they're about as deep musically as a fucking kiddie pool. So that's why I hate punknews.org. And finally, Polani, I hope I pronounced that right, wants to know what my favorite foreign horror film is. There are so many, and I'll name a few, but I know I'm leaving some off the list. Let's see, Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2. Mario Bava's The Evil Eye, which is also known as The Girl Who Knew Too Much. That's more of a thriller. Battle Royale is a great movie. And
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's so good, right? Demons
So good.
1 and 2. Demons 1 and 2 are really good, and Let the Right One In is also amazing. So there's another good.
That's my pick.
Yeah, there's another good vampire movie. I think it's Belgian. I'm almost positive it is, but I could be totally wrong. And it's called Chimeras, and that one is awesome. So,
we kicked that one around a few months ago. Chimeras. I remember looking into it.
Yeah, we didn't actually talk about it, but it's up there. We'll probably talk about it more around. That's a movie I think we're going to talk about on Valentine's Day.
Nice.
Makes sense.
We should do like a foreign month of just like all foreign horror films. So you can convince me to watch Audition and cry myself to sleep again.
Oh, I'd love to do a foreign month. Audition's probably on that list too. I didn't think of that one. There's a creature feature from South Korea called Chaws. It's basically like Jaws, but it's a wild boar. And it's
my God.
It's a great movie. It's on Shudder. You can check that one out too.
I'm gonna watch that on my own just for fun.
It's long as fuck, but it's very, very funny. Very, very funny. So thanks everyone for participating in Ask Bloodbath Anything. If you want to ask me anything next episode, no worries. Just send an email to us or tweet with your question and the hashtag Ask Bloodbath Anything, and we will include it in the show. We sort of asked around to see what some of your favorite movies to watch each October was, and we got some pretty good feedback. So let's give a quick shout out to Jay Giles from the J Movie Talk podcast. His favorites were Halloween, Trick or Treat, The Thing, Shocker, The Hidden, Graveyard Shift, and Silver Bullet. He had a bunch more, but I forgot to put them on there, and I was looking for it on the Core Temp Arts Facebook page. I couldn't find it. So Jay, I know you added more to that, but I looked up and down. I couldn't find it. So just hit us up, and I'll put it in the next episode.
You are listening to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray. Let us know what you think by reaching out to us. We can be found on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, or Facebook by simply searching Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray. To suggest a film or trailer you think we should discuss, or to comment on this or any other episode, send an email to bloodgutsandbluray@gmail.com. We will always get back to you. Thank you for listening to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Welcome to a night of total terror. Night of the living dead, the dead who live on living flesh. The dead whose haunted souls hunt the living whose bodies are the only food for these ungodly creatures. Night of the living dead. A bizarre adventure in fear. An experience in shock, more shattering than your strangest nightmare. Night of the living dead. A night with the dead who cannot die. A night of total terror. of the living dead.
Tonight we're going to talk about what many consider one of the best horror films ever made. And we might be stupid for talking about it, but whatever. We're going to talk about Night of the Living Dead, both the original and the 1990 remake. So let's start with the original. It was directed by George Romero, of course, released in 1968. Its budget was $114,000, which isn't super expensive, but if you consider that amount in 1968, it kind of is, but it ended up grossing $30 million, which, if you're doing the math, is 263 times its budget, which is insane.
Damn.
Yeah. The body count is 9. The naughty count is 0, unless you count the naked zombie approaching the house halfway through the 95-minute film.
Oh, I almost called that.
Yeah.
I was like, no, there was a naked lady.
But that's reaching for a naughty count. She's not fucking anything, so.
Sorry to trip you up there.
Basically, the remake and the original, or I guess you should say the original and the remake, they're basically the same movie. So, Brett, why don't you tell these fine people what these movies are all about?
Beautiful. And if I mix up details on this one from between the 90s one and the 60s one, let me know. But Barbara and Johnny, brother and sister, are going out to a remote cemetery to visit their father's grave?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there we go. Their father's grave. When suddenly they are attacked by lumbering random people who seem to be trying to bite them and kill them. Barbara manages to escape the fray and finds herself some solace in a farmhouse where she meets Ben, who is also seeking survivors and fuel so he can get to the next city. They decide to barricade themselves within this farmhouse after fighting off some of the reanimated unburied dead. Confused and shocked and frightened, they begin preparing for the upcoming evening by putting doors and all sorts of tables up on the windows, and are also greeted with other survivors that were staying in the basement. And they continuously battle amongst themselves and against the coming threat to see if they could possibly even live through the night.
Well done. That basically covers both movies. It's the same.
Without teetering, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about with the differences, but yeah, that covers both. Yeah, I think Night of the Living Dead was one of the first horror films I saw as a kid that sort of gets right into the scares, very close to the opening credits. I think you're 5 minutes before Barbara's attacked by the first ghoul.
That's what I love about this movie. It just gets right into it.
It gets right into it. And I love that line. They're coming to get you, Barbara.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I think I liked it better when Bill Moseley did it, though.
Do you?
I think I did. I liked it. He's just a creep. Love it.
Well, they did really kick it off in the remake. I know we're not going to try to do comparisons right off the bat, but when you say Bill Moseley did it, it was like the first line of the movie.
I love it, and she's like, "Stop it, Johnny! Stop it!
You're ignorant. You're acting like a child." So I don't know if you consider the part of Johnny like a bit part. I don't, because of the impact he has on one of the characters at the beginning and at the end. He's not just some guy selling the protagonist a slice of pizza, and make it a joke. Barbara's alive because Johnny wrestles a ghoul to the ground and gets killed, and then comes back from the dead to take her life.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think the original, the impact's even huger, dude, because she's totally bothered that whole movie because of his death.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's like paralyzed by fear,
I watched it again last night to prepare for the episode today, and every time I watch it, I just think to myself, like, this was George Romero's first film. Like, this was his first feature-length film. Didn't know if he wanted to be a horror director. Didn't know what he wanted to do. He's like, you know what? I just want to make a zombie movie, and I want to, have some imagery, in there, and some, a little bit of foreshadowing. Like, he's like, I want to tell a really good story, but like you don't really know anything about the characters. And I think that that's just a wild. It's unbelievable how successful this movie has become, and how much it crushed in the box office. You'd think that you'd have like nowhere to go but down after this. And I'm not going to get too deeply into his career, but let's just say that this wouldn't be the last successful Dead movie that he did. He did Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. They've all been fairly successful in their own right. With that, also, this came out in 1968. Now let's, real quick, just to give you some context over what came out that year. Here's a couple of films that came out. The Blood Beast of Terror, which came out with Peter Cushing. It's a horror movie star all throughout the 60s. The Devil Rides Out with Christopher Lee. Dracula Has Risen from the Grave with Christopher Lee. The Curse of the Crimson Altar with Boris Karloff and Christopher Lee. And of course, Rosemary's Baby came out a couple months before Night of the Living Dead did. So it was a very, very competitive year for horror movies, and Night of the Living Dead, with almost no budget, crushed all of them. It's amazing.
It's fantastic.
The original, of course, was originally called Night of the Flesh Eaters, but they had to change that, which is the reason why they lost their copyright and it went into public domain. But we'll get into that later. I didn't know this until later, but Romero basically reimagined the novel I Am Legend. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, I read about it.
It's wild. But he kind of took it, like he reimagined it and he borrowed things from it, but I wouldn't, I think a lot of people, he keeps saying that he ripped it off, but I don't think he ripped it off at all.
If he did, he did it better.
I've never heard of that, and I would never say that. Yeah, I would never go, oh yeah, this is a total rip-off of I Am Legend. There's no way.
Yeah. He just repositioned the idea. He changed the story he made the monster schools, not vampires, made it present day. It's not the last human being on Earth, I think at that point, like when you make enough changes, it barely resembles the idea of where he was borrowing it from. You know what I mean? He went through the creative process in his head before he started shooting, and it's him and John Russo. They were both. He didn't write this movie alone, but my favorite aspects about this, though, is the radio and TV broadcasts throughout the original. I think that's one of the things that makes it stand out against the remake in such a superior way. The news flashes are done in a very Walter Cronkite sort of way. This just in from Cumberland, Maryland. Like they do that thing, and the choice of the words is very what's the word I'm looking for? Like front page sensationalist. Mm-hmm. As well. They use words like flesh-eating ghouls and marauding ghouls and stuff like that. And it looked like wartime newsreel,
And it looked very disheveled too. Like when they would show the newscast in the original one, you could tell that they showed like all the different executive producers and stuff in the background working, and they definitely seemed like they had no answer. So like you said, they just did what they could just to write a plot to it. And in contrast, the newer one, the newscaster's almost sarcastic, and he giggles to himself. He's like, yeah, they apparently they're eating the living, but that's preposterous. Like, it came off as pretentious, like, this couldn't be happening. And I really like the original newscast better because it was just more news break. This flesh-eating ghouls.
We're finding the victims partially devoured. Like, that's like he's in shock that he's saying those words. It's just like, it sounds like the same like during the assassination of JFK, like the way that it was like the news was broken that way. Like, this just in from Dallas. It's the same thing. I think that's just such a cool aspect to really tie the whole film together. And like, you sort of get answers as to why it's happening, but nothing is confirmed ever. They they say it's like radiation from space and stuff. There's a part where the military officials and the scientists are being like guerrilla interviewed on TV, and they can't come together on an answer.
I love that part.
Yeah, that's George Romero. That's the guy that's interviewing him, which is.
So like, how can you not tell it? The thing from Venus, like that space, that shuttle, gave off so much radiation, and like the scientists are like, oh, it's definitely related, and the guy from the military is like, oh, we haven't confirmed that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's where like, what's the word? It's. I'm trying to think of how to like put this in words. I mean, there's your open-endedness right there. There's where you never get your answer. It's because like the two powers that be that need to come together to solve this problem can't come together as to why it's happening. And meanwhile, people are getting devoured by dead people. So I think that's such a wild thing. I also didn't know that they didn't really have a working script for this. Did either of you guys know that? Because most of it was like storyboard, and then they improvised a lot of the takes in the house. Either of you guys know that?
No.
Yeah, and I knew that, and they rewrote the scenes and the characters based on who they casted.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes this movie so great, it's a perfect example of a film that works within a small budget. And they did everything that they could to make it work within a small budget, like shooting it on 35mm black and white. I don't know if either one of you guys has seen the 2004 version where it's in color, but it does not do the film justice. It's actually better in black and white. It makes it look more like a documentary.
I was actually.
Oh no, go ahead.
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but actually that was one of the things I wanted to comment. I think part of this film's horror is the black and white, because there are so many beautiful scenes with like the shadowing and the color. Like they have a couple scenes with like lights coming through the blinds, and some of the deaths, especially when Karen becomes reanimated. There's something that could be said about the black and white chocolate syrup blood they used, and how the angles they had that were frightening, that even I thought to myself, if this was in color, I might giggle, but black and white, this works.
Sure, and because they were able to, for the most part, this movie takes place in one location, and you sort of like that. The house itself becomes kind of like a character. I know that gets thrown around a lot, but like you just become very familiar with it. Like that the basement door is adjacent to the main entrance that's boarded up, and you already get the feeling of the house as you're watching it there. And that wasn't the intention when they made the film. That happened as a result, because it would have been way more expensive to travel and shoot and travel and shoot and travel and shoot. They only kind of they did most of their shooting in that location. So I think that's one of the things that makes it cool. And then it becomes like a home invasion movie, which makes you ask yourself, because we were talking about John Carpenter earlier, so how much did Night of the Living Dead influence a movie like Assault on Precinct 13?
Oh, yeah.
We watch that and you're like, oh my god. Like, I'm just thinking about like how all the themes and stuff that that take place in both movies, which we'll get into in a little bit, but how much it's like, wow, other than zombies, this sort of is like Night of the Living Dead. At least that's what I think. And I love Precinct 13. I'm not shitting on it in any respect. I love it a lot. I like how Romero used his friends to play zombies. I thought it was pretty cool. The interior of the house.
That was
I
cool.
was talking about the house before. I'm just running down a quick list here. The interior of the house was shot in 2 different homes. One for the upstairs, one for the downstairs and the basement, and the home used for the upstairs is still standing, so you can go and get your picture taken in front of it. Brett mentioned that they used chocolate syrup for blood, which you obviously couldn't do with color film, so they took advantage of that and just made their blood even cheaper. And just a wild movie. Like, it's one of those one of the reasons it's such a good Halloween movie is because it's a movie that I don't feel like I could ever get tired of watching. I always seem to pick up a little thing here and there, like a little different, every time. So I'm talking too much.
I definitely, one of the things I like about the movie that I want to touch on, and this influenced some of my favorite video game series, is the feeling that everything they have is so little. Like they have so little resources. I mean, it's a struggle just to get gas, which in this modern day and age of zombie films, these people end up with Gatling guns and grenades and all sorts of crazy shit. And they're like, they've got a handful of bullets and they've got like a rifle and a pistol. And it's like, it feels like, and what I'm kind of referencing is like, I remember when I was a kid playing like the original Resident Evil games, where it's like, do I even shoot this zombie because I have 5 fucking bullets left? Can I just run past him? Can I just get past this one? Do I have to waste one of my precious bullets? And this film makes you feel like that, where they're just trying to break everything in the house down, which is not a lot, to try and hope to survive through the coming onslaught. And I feel like that's an unspoken tension throughout the entire movie, is how much does this house have to provide us shelter?
That's a really good point. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, I mean they do. I think you said this, but they do kind of make mention of like, we can't stay here forever type of thing. They do kind of say that a couple times, but I think that's I think you made a good point there. That's pretty good. The overall theme though, like, well, but then you could sort of tie that as like the house being the like a metaphor for the society that they're living in, because the overall theme of the film is the disdain for the turbulent 60s government in the U.S. So it was used like, so they used like a sporadic Living Dead invasion to convey the inability of like military and science to protect its citizenry from itself. And of course, and this movie's happening during the Civil Rights Movement. Dwayne Jones gets casted as the hero Ben, which was a no shit happy accident. If you ask anybody involved with the casting, they all say the same thing. He was the best audition. He sounded the best.
Yep.
So that's why we picked him.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, he's amazing. And it wasn't very common that a black man played the hero with a level head amongst white cast members. Really, I don't think there is a movie that happens before Night of the Living Dead. Romero insisted that the stage actor got the part because he auditioned for the best, which again invokes the comparison to Assault on Precinct 13, because you basically have the same thing. There's a film historian named Robin Wood that argued the zombie victims symbolize the repression of the quote-unquote other in bourgeoisie American society, namely civil rights activists, feminists, homosexuals, counterculturists in general. So this movie is a lot heavier than just a zombie movie.
Oh, there's a lot of sociological references throughout this film, like you touched on with the racism and the fear of the government, and there's a lot in this movie that's a backdrop, but because it's so well executed, it's not like obviously shoved in your face.
Exactly. The smart audience members are gonna pick it up, and after a few watches, anybody's gonna pick that up. Maybe not
because you look at
maybe not the first time you're seeing it, because you're kind of hit with this like, whoa, like holy shit. Especially in 1968, like gore like this had never happened in a movie before. So people are watching it and like their jaws are on the floor, and then they put themselves through it again, and then that's when they start to pick up the themes. That's my opinion anyway.
And I definitely agree with that, because you take a character like Harry, who is obviously ideologically protecting his daughter and his wife, and is combative, especially combative towards Ben in both films. A little exaggerated in the second one, but I mean in the remake, but he never outright does anything or says anything to Dwayne Jones's Ben as racist. He doesn't belittle him or do anything like that nature, but he is a combative white male who is dressed in finer clothing, and his family's dressed in finer clothing, and he just wants to shelter himself in the basement and hide, while Tom and Judy and Barbara and Ben, who seem to represent more of a middle class, especially like Tom and Judy are kind of like the country people in this film, while they want to stay in the house with exits and entrances and ways to fight, Harry is content to weather out the storm, air quotes, because we're not on video. And I think that's a big representation that, like you said, would kind of go unforeseen by people who are just like, oh, cool, gore and stuff like that. But anybody who watches it a couple times will see these references.
I'm going to posit a point here, and I want Bruce to comment on it first, because is he still there? We haven't talked to him.
Hey, come on. It's Bub, not Bruce. It's Bub right now, not Bruce.
So a lot of the hold on one second, I had a call. A lot of distributors wanted the filmmakers to revise the ending to make it like a Hollywood ending where it's a happy ending. Can you imagine a happy ending to this film? Would it be as landmark as it is? And before you answer that, should one of us explain the ending, or give away the ending before you can posit your point? Go, Bruce.
All right, you can give away the ending first. Give it away.
Okay, so basically everybody is dead except for Ben. He holed up in the basement, and they weren't a lynch mob, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like I guess the militia. We'll call them the Minutemen.
I would say militia. Yeah.
They're kind of going house to house and shooting undead. And as they approach the house, he comes out of the basement. They think he's undead. He gets shot in the head, and that's it. That's the end of the movie. Now everybody that was in that house is now dead. Bruce, do you think a happy ending would have made this movie as landmark as it was?
I don't think so. I mean, there's no other way to do it. I feel like that's like the glue of the movie. That seals the deal. I mean, I think if he survived, it's like kind of like, life goes on. He's gonna live his life, and you're like, this guy's fighting the whole movie to stay alive, keep these people alive, and then at the end he's still alive, and they just pop him off and throw him on they throw him on the other dead people. I thought that was a great ending.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's at the very least, maybe it's an ending that everybody wants a happy ending, but I can forget a happy ending. I can forget the details of a happy ending. You can't forget the details of what happens at the end of Night of the Living Dead.
I mean, like how would they do it? Come on out, man. Racism's over. Come on. We're gonna do this. We're fighting dead people now. Fuck racism.
So before I mentioned that people were seeing this movie and just being totally shocked. There was no MPAA until a month after this film was released. So there were like 9-year-olds in the audience watching this and like crying hysterically in tears because of what they were being subjected to. And I think that's great.
Poor parenting.
Well, I mean, if you bring your 9-year-old child to a film that's titled Night of the Living Dead, that is without it's a definition of bad parenting.
Not exactly, because at the time horror movies were coming in from the UK, and there were the Universal movies, and the Universal monster films, and kids were at those all the time. Kids were watching The Wolfman and Boris Karloff and Frankenstein, so they didn't really, there was no line to be drawn. And then Night of the Living Dead basically drew that line.
Yeah.
And like
it was just
Rosemary's Baby and stuff. Yeah.
It was just a bunch of greaser fathers like, I got stuff to do. Go see a movie.
And course, when it came out, it was considered total shit. It was destroyed by critics and called it an orgy of sadism and violence and stuff. But now it's considered one of the greatest films of all time, one of the greatest independent films of all time. It was added to the National Registry in 1999 in the Library of Congress, which is sort of like makes it a national treasure. Hard to say it wasn't revolutionary. The word zombie is never used in the film. And and until Night of the Living Dead, zombies were not like flesh-eating cannibals. They were like, it was like the voodoo thing that we talked about with like Serpent and the Rainbow and stuff. So I just think that was it's just such an amazing movie. Everything about it is fucking amazing.
They came to pay their respects.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Why do you have to be so cruel?
What?
Show some respect.
Now they're running for their lives.
A biologist in Stockton, California have released reports focusing on the phenomenon, specifically on that trance-like state.
Every shelter is becoming a trap.
Are you sure we're gonna be all right?
Cooper, you gotta help me out!
And every road out
Don't stop no matter what happens.
is just another dead end.
They're coming right for us!
George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
Let's get into the remake a little bit. The 1990 remake is directed by special effects guru and sometimes actor Tom Savini as his directorial debut. In it, 8 people die. No one gets naked. It cost $4.2 million to make. It grossed a scant $5.8 million, so it definitely made its money back. And of course, got panned by most critics at the time of its release. But in true hypocritical fashion, it gets more respect now, more than 25 years later. George Romero was the executive producer, and he rewrote some of the script to make it a little bit different than the original. He basically wanted to see this remake come out before another unauthorized remake came out, because he wanted to get paid. They're trying to get paid for all the stuff, all the money that they didn't get from the distributor when they originally released it. So, and I think Savini directed because he was originally asked to do the special effects in 1968, but he had to leave to go to Vietnam and serve as a combat photographer. So Savini kept the effects restrained in this remake to try not to outdo the original. And of course, he said that production for this was a nightmare. What are some of your guys' thoughts on the 1990 remake?
I like it. I think Tom Savini was the perfect person to do it. That guy's gold in my book. And like I think the zombies in that movie, they're just quality. Like I saw that movie first before I saw the original.
I honestly can't remember which one I saw first.
I'm telling you, man, it made me want to see the original.
Mm-hmm. He said that the production for this thing was hell. He clashed with producers a lot. They tried to stifle his creativity, and Romero wasn't there to back him up. But and he was a brand new director, so he couldn't argue with them. But I think that he probably took this too because he loved the first film. And it was like, oh, okay, I know this film backwards and forwards. I've watched it so many times. I would just feel comfortable. My first shot at directing, I feel comfortable doing a movie that I know a lot about. Rather than like making it up as he goes. Like he goes, no. And then Ben and Mr. Cooper have to fight about whether or not they have to go into the basement. Like that, and that's the part that happens here. Like that,
I'm surprised they gave him such a hard time. That's crazy.
Yeah, and as he said, only 40% of the stuff that he wanted in the film actually made it into the film, because he had other ideas. And one of those ideas, which is actually genius if you think about it, was to start the film off in black and white, and then make it, and then like colorize it as it progressed. So by the end, it's in full color, and halfway through, it's like sepia, which would have been awesome. That would have been really.
That's a cool idea. That's a real cool idea.
I thought it would have been a really nice idea, but they were like, no, that'll never work. And then there were a lot of cuts to avoid like an NC-17 that Savini says that's why it got panned. I mean, Bruce, I'm with you as far as I keep calling you Bruce. I'm sorry, Bub. I agree with you 100%. As far as remakes go, it's not bad. I never expect them to be better than the original, and I think, like I said, Savini loved this film, and that's why he wanted to do it. Brett, I'm stealing your time. What's your take on the remake? I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh, no, you're fine. First of all, I'm happy this remake exists because I don't feel like anybody could have done a better job in the time that it was made to remake this film. I feel like they upped a lot of things. Like you said, they added some great stuff. I personally had a high reverence for the old one because the original one was one of the original horror movies that I saw. Like, I was never really into horror movies, and I saw that, and I said, holy shit, there's something going on about these horror movies because this thing is so old and it's so good. So I never saw the remake until a couple days ago. I'm happy it exists, but one gripe I have is I don't like the all-empowered Barbara character in this one. I don't like it.
I love it. This is where you and I differ.
You do?
I love it.
I don't like it.
So
I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle.
Let me say a few things. The movie, for one, is extremely well casted. Yeah, Tony Todd.
Oh, it is, definitely.
Tony Todd is Ben, and he had to fight that role out with Lawrence Fishburne, which I could not imagine him being in that role. But he had to fight out with Lawrence Fishburne and Ving Rhames. Tom Tolles, rest in peace, is Mr. Cooper. Bill Moseley, of course, is Johnny. Patricia Tallman plays Barbara. And the reason why I like this Barbara, this is one of the only things that I think that the remake does just a tiny bit better than, not a tiny bit. I'm being too generous. I think it does better than the original. Is that that's how a normal person would react. They'd be in shock at first, and then they would, their survival instincts kick in, and they want to live. And she does, in the first one, she's totally catatonic, damsel in distress for the whole film. And she snaps. In this one, in 1990, she snaps too and becomes a warrior, and I thought that was awesome. It also helps that Patricia Tallman is pretty good looking on the eyes. Like, she's a good looking chick, so that helps. And I always hated how the original Barbara just goes into shock, and she's just kind of like everybody has to look after her. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not something that's believable to me. I believe there's some initial shock at first, and then there's a transformation, and I think that's for everybody. If you don't transform, you die. And that's it. In this movie, the gore and the acting, they're a little bit better, but that could be attributed to like a bigger budget and modernity. You know what I mean? It's another revision that I like is how at the end of the remake, Mr. Cooper sort of becomes like a zombie. Like, he starts acting like a zombie to get his hands on the rifle that Barbara has. Like, he's like approaching her the same way that the zombies are approaching the house, which I thought was kind of a cool little thing. I didn't like how number one, they changed the girl's name from Karen to Sarah, which
that was weird.
I don't know why they did that, and I also don't know why she doesn't kill her mom with the garden trowel, which is a cool scene, and they could have done that, and they didn't do it. Instead, they kind of paid tribute to it by just blood splattering on a garden trowel downstairs when they're in the basement. So, and also, Sarah is not nearly as frightening as Karen in the first one. Karen is frightening. That little girl is frightening when she goes up the stairs. Ugh. So, there's a scene that I absolutely love, and it's the scene where Tony Todd, it's at the very end, and he's sitting in the basement smoking a cigarette and listening to the radio. I just thought that was just like what a Like that's a John Wayne type scene, you know, like it's
he's just laughing his ass off, giggling about everything that he finds with like the gas pump key and it's the remake he finds the gas pump key, right?
Yeah.
That was like one of the best scenes in the remake. I totally agree. Like he pulls out like the crushed cigarette and he starts giggling, and then he pulls another one and he listens to the radio and laughs. Like he's finally lost it.
I love that too, though, because it's like everything was in grasp. You know what I'm saying? Everything was right there for you. You know.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why they made him a zombie at the end, though. That was one of the reasons why I felt like we needed to bring up the ending of the last one before. Like,
that was going to be a gripe of mine.
That's a gripe because how does he turn into a zombie? He killed both the zombies downstairs.
Never got bit.
How does he turn into a zombie? So
which is something they laid out in that film with Karen being bit. That was the whole point. Is like they didn't just say, "Oh, well, the radiocaster says if they're bit, then you're going to turn into one." No, you just had to deduct that yourself in the original one. So we had that plot line laid out for us, and then all of a sudden, he's just a zombie that stands in front of a bunch of rednecks with rifles and just stands there and then looks at Barbara. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh God, no.
So one of the scenes I did like was that like, and it's like a brutal scene, and it was written into the remake, and it was supposed to be in the original, but they didn't do it. Was that like zombie hoedown jamboree at the end that all those rednecks are at? That looked like a fucking good place to be. There's barbecuing, they're drinking booze, they're eating off of a food truck. Like that seemed like a lot of fun. And then they're treating people like animals. Like, you know, I mean, which is terrible. But I liked it because I got the subtext of it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I also like how Barbara ends up killing Mr. Cooper at the end. I thought that
did feel good.
And of course says that classic line, here's another one for the fire. There's a few like forced parts in it, but overall I thought it was pretty good. I have a list of stuff here that before we go into ratings. And do you have a conspiracy corner today or no? Or conspiracy crawl space?
No. I did, but we already touched on the government and the racism and kind of the political aspects of the movie. So we'd be spinning our wheels. So
we're gonna
I don't.
That's okay. No big deal. Here's some comparisons that I thought between the two films before we go into ratings. Right after this, we'll go into ratings. Obviously the radio announcer and the music to the film is better in the original than it is in the remake. The remake lacks the TV news reports, and the original had it, which was like central. It was like central in establishing the scare factor because you're figuring out what's going on as the character is figuring it out. So there's no dramatic irony throughout the film. It does leave the remake a little bit more open-ended, but not necessarily worse off in that regard. I go as far to say that it's the reason why the remake feels a little bit closer to like Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead than the original does. Just a tiny bit. The original looks much better because of the black and white. We talked about this a little bit before. It makes sense too because Romero was a student of film. Savini was cutting his teeth as a director. Black and white enhanced it. It just looks better. The zombies are scarier in the original, but they are not as consistent in their movements, in the way that they move around mechanically. I think that they move around and they look more what's the word I'm looking for, like believable, I guess. And maybe that's because of the year that we live in and all the zombie stuff thereafter. I buy those zombies more than I buy the other ones, but I think the black and white zombies are still a little bit scarier.
The black and white ones, if you just look at them by themselves outside of the movie, they do just look like a confused audience. They're just kind of like, they have like an eyebrow raised, just kind of looking at you with your mouth open, but still more scary in some weird way.
There are, and this should be, the last two things I have to say in comparison is that the the remake lacks two extremely awesome parts. Well, one of them, it lacks one part, and it didn't capture the other one as well. The first is that Barbara in the first one, or in the original, Barbara's telling her story to Ben while he's sort of like barricading themselves in, and he's like, you need to calm down, like you're getting hysterical, and then he ends up like slapping her because she's like trying to escape to go find Johnny because she doesn't know that Johnny's dead and that he's a ghoul now. And it was a good little bit of acting. It definitely looked like stage acting, but it was a good little bit of acting. And then there's the scene where Tom and Judy are being eaten after they're blown up in the truck is one of the greatest scenes in any horror film ever made, period.
The barbecue scene.
Yeah. And because it's so... And the remake did not get this scene down. They didn't nail it the way the original did.
They just show him dragging the body, right?
Yeah, and the visuals of the original combined with the soundtrack behind it, fucking incredible. Can't say enough about it. Now that I brought up the lynching scene, which was wild. Still, to me, it's just such a wild part. And yeah, that's about all I got. So that means it's about time for our final thoughts. So what we'll do is we'll go around. We're going to talk to Bub first because he's been pretty quiet most of this episode. It's probably my fault. I've been doing a lot of talking, and I apologize.
It's all your fault.
It's always my fault.
You are listening to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray. We are dedicated to bringing you the show across your favorite medium. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and YouTube. Please send all suggestions to bloodgutsandbluray@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Hey, what are you listening to?
Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray.
What's Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray?
You've never heard of Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray?
I've never heard of Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray.
Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray is a horror movie podcast. They talk about horror movies they love and even the ones they hate. They're actually really entertaining. You can listen to them on iTunes.
Well, what if I don't have iTunes?
And you can find them on Stitcher or YouTube, or we could listen together.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, your place and mine.
Wait, did you hear that?
Hear what?
But I didn't even get a chance to listen to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray.
Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray will never die, but you will. Listen now on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube before it's too late. Part of the Core 10 Parts Podcast Network. So, give us the ratings for the original, then the ratings for the remake, and then,
I don't know, man. The original's a 5 for me. The original's a 5 for me. You know what? That sparked everything else, I mean, I feel like you wouldn't have a lot of the things that we like today if it wasn't for that original film, And I love the fact that George Romero hates The Walking Dead. I fucking hate that show lately, too.
I hate that show, too.
I mean, if I wanted to see somebody drive around in a car for an hour, that's great, but, show me a fucking zombie, show me something happening.
I watched the first 4 episodes of The Walking Dead, and I said, well, this is stupid, and I have not watched an episode since.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I mean, I liked it at first, but you know what? They're going the wrong way. And I would say for the remake, I'd give it a straight 4, Like, I mean, like you said, for, like, the little inconsistencies, I mean, he's riding the back of an original, and there's little things that are tripped up, but it was still a great film. It made me want to see the original that started everything.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the mistakes that he made was like it going into theaters. Maybe it should have just gone to like HBO or something. Like it should have done one of those things instead of being giving it a chance to fail in the box office and having the critics destroy it. Instead, let it go to, people can watch it at home and take it in for themselves. That's my opinion. Brett, what are your ratings here?
Well, if we're talking about the original, if you take out the reverence and the fact that it really kickstarted so much of the zombie world, and you just took away everything. I'm still landing at a 5 with all the points we touched. It's still, to this day, an absolutely phenomenal movie. Has so much subtext in it, has just a great, a frightening message, and I almost want to call it timeless, because I can watch it in 2016 and still be extremely uncomfortable the entire film, frightened, and it's a 5 in my book still. I agree with Bub.
Yeah.
The remake, if it was a standalone movie on its own, if it didn't share so much DNA with the original, it might be a lower movie, but I give it a 3.5, and the reason I do is because even though I may disagree with the changes that they made, specifically the ending and Barbara, I applaud them for changing it and somehow still keeping the exact same essence of the original, but putting a twist on it and somehow not completely ruining it. I give it a lot of credit, and I found that even though I didn't agree with the changes, it twisted me. I was like, oh shit, oh my god, you know. So I give it a 3.5.
I give the original a 4.5.
Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding.
I think it's an extremely important film. All the accolades it has, the fact that you guys are calling it 5s, I think is totally warranted. I just think that it's got its flaws. Mm-hmm. It's got many flaws, and it makes up for them so well. But like I said, I watch it every single Halloween, at least once around Halloween. So I love it that much. And I just think there are other movies that I call 5s, and I just think that they are better. And they're just like that little tiny. They have that little bit. I don't throw around 4.5s or 5s very much. So when I do, it's pretty serious. I give the remake a 3.5. Look, the original is just so groundbreaking and it's near perfect, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to hammer on it or anything. And I enjoy the remake, and I just think it lacks some of the technical aspects, but like Brett said, it keeps the essence of the original. In a word, I guess I would call the original superb and the remake very good, slightly less than great. And that's where I'm at with it. So
these other movies that you call 5, do they have a bigger naughty factor? Is that what it is?
So the naughty factor only plays in here's the thing. Here's the idea. If there's like 1 or 2 people having sex, that really doesn't affect the score unless it's like a super hot chick. Like if I could, like a really, really hot chick. Like I love Olivia Wilde, so if there's a scene, if she's in a movie and there's a scene and it's like totally full frontal, then I'd be like, oh, okay, that might be worth a half a point to me. But if like a couple had sex and then they get killed, because that's usually what happens, that doesn't really do anything. But if they're if they have a bunch of sex, like there's a bunch of different people just having a bunch of sex, I'll usually get.
What is this? Eyes wide shut?
I'll give. I'll give it a couple. I'll give it like a half a point, I guess, for the whole thing. But at that point, you have taken the movie and you've made it. You've put so much time into people having sex that the story probably isn't that good. And what I'm saying with that is that the redeeming factor is probably is probably people seeing boobies. And then as far as like the body counts go, like once you reach a certain point, if you're killing 175 people and you see 175 dead bodies, like people get killed in a movie, the movie itself is probably not very good, but I will give you that much credit for putting all that time into killing 175 people. I'll give you a little bit. But right now, as it stands, I add a body count bonus to certain movies. If they kill 30 people in the movie, I give them a half a point.
Nice.
So it's like the Dead Alive lawnmower scene is gonna amp up that quota.
Yeah. And it did because I think I called that movie a a 4, but I originally gave it like a 3.5 because it was like a little wonky at times, but like it was so bloody and so glory that I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I have to give them something for that because like it's legendary because of that, and that's the reason I like it. So I gave it some more, I give it some more love. So yeah. So all right, guys. Well, that's gonna do it for Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray number 15. Join us next week as we continue our Halloween countdown with Evil Dead 2 and The Reanimator. Make sure you tell us what your favorite Halloween films are by reaching out to us on Twitter, hitting us up on Facebook, or shooting an email to bloodgutsandbluray@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Until then, toodaloo.
Have a good evening.
Hey, Bloodbath, can I ask you something real quick? That Tony Todd guy, what was his big role?
Candyman.
Before we go. Wait, I'm sorry, what?
Candyman.
Wait, I'm sorry, one more time?
Candyman.
I'm Bub, and good luck, Bloodbath.
Thank you for listening to Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray. Written and hosted by Bloodbath, Bub, and Brett 667. Edited and produced by Bloodbath. Music has been graciously provided by the Slasher Film Festival Strategy and Nightbirds. Artwork and logo have been provided by Bub. Blood, Guts, and Blu-ray is available on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, as well as @BloodGutsBluray on Twitter, @BloodGutsandBluray on Instagram, and visit our Tumblr page by going to bloodgutsandbluray.tumblr.com. For any questions regarding the show, advertising, or anything else, please send an email to bloodgutsandbluray@gmail.com. Thanks again. Get possessed.